Hi everyone, Thomas Lancaster here, and welcome to this video recording of a presentation I gave at the International Centre for Academic Integrity Conference 2023. Now I'm recording this again because there are a few technical problems in the original presentation. So apologies, you will not get the laughter of my jokes as they come through, but it's about a very important topical conversation about student assessment, like artificial intelligence, and what's possible. At least that was the title I gave originally when I submitted my request to present at the conference. Now I'm recording this in Indianapolis, the day of the conference, so I don't have all my usual technical setup. So this will be a slightly more basic presentation. Hopefully it comes through across. But if you do want to tweet about this or comment on it, hashtag ICAI 2023 is the one. You can also copy in at Dr. Lancaster, which is me. If you don't know me, I am a computer scientist from Imperial College London in the UK, and I've been involved in the academic integrity field for more than 20 years, but recently, like many of us, particularly interested in artificial intelligence. And being a computer scientist, I can sometimes do things that other people can't easily do, such as generate pictures of myself. You can see one on the screen, but of course, like everyone, not every picture I generated myself is perfect. This one has done a reasonable job of capturing many aspects of me, but not everything there. And this is an example of technology that a few months ago I was doing this. Nowadays, you can find off-the-shelf apps that will do very much the same thing, although the off-the-shelf apps still won't give you as many options as I have, knowing how to go further into the system and deeper in the system. It also means you have to pay for it rather than, as I did, generate this on my PC back in the UK there. So things you can do if you understand AI and technology and how all of this works. But a quick bit of background of this presentation. It may not be that relevant to everyone, but I originally submitted the proposal in November 2022 for presentation in March 2023. And at the time, AI was quite topical, and I thought I'd show various things I did, like this example about Harry Potter and an essay I generated showing how Harry Potter series of books had led to an increase in academic cheating. And so what I've done here was created a system that would write an outline for an essay and then would fill in the words and fill in the blanks. And, well, it does a reasonable job. At the conclusion, you may or may not agree with, Harry Potter series has contributed, at least partially, to an increase in academic cheating. Now, you may think that is complete rubbish. I think that's rubbish. There may be other things that people talk about the Harry Potter books and say, well, there may or may not be a good example, but academic integrity violations is not one of these. But clearly, some people could use this to justify banning these books if they wanted. And this is one way in which AI can be dangerous there. But what you're seeing is an example of a large language model, which is what AI essentially is, which has managed to find a relationship between two terms, academic integrity, while cheating, and Harry Potter, that aren't necessarily related, because that's what I've asked it to do. And this model is not particularly intelligent. It just knows about words, interrelationships, patterns, how sentences are constructed, and it's managed to produce this text which has never been seen before. I could have run this same request again and got a different answer out there. So this is the power of this technology. Now, this is the power of this technology back sometime, maybe September, October 2022. And so I'd come up with a long list of things that I could produce along with this, this more recently produced picture of a clipboard, which again is produced using the same software I used to produce the picture of myself. But things to do with essays, even though I don't set essays myself as a computer scientist, I use in other disciplines and art, things like generating reflective writing, something we often ask to try and involve students in the assessment process, but actually you can fake this. Creating the content for slides, Lots of business examples because AI can be very good at generating business ideas, product pictures, marketing plans, whatever it might be, fiction if you're into creative disciplines, although it won't always make complete sense, and various things to do computer programming that I'll say a bit more about later on in this presentation. But what happened just 10 days after I submitted those original, the conference proposal, this came along. You may recognize this logo as being associated with ChatGPT. I got access to ChatGPT very quickly, so I could play around with it and see what it could do. But nowadays, this is being quite commonly used. It's been all over the media. Students know about it. Universities have been widely talking about this. And what is different to the technology I had access to before is just how accessible this is. Now, it's not always immediately available because there are usage limitations on the system, but once you get access, it's a really nice interface. You can type in requests or prompts. You can add more information. You can add replies. You can refine answers. And it can be used quite legitimately, which I'm sure is a way that was intended. But it can also be used to breach academic integrity. And so this technology can be a challenge for educators, but it is out there in this very simple to use system, which can feel like having a conversation with a friend. So I very quickly created lots of examples of the kind of assignments I could fake using ChatGPT. These are a few examples from my Twitter account at Dr. Lancaster. I won't go through them in great detail, but computer programming, the top left, a system to create word searches, needed a bit of refinement on my part. I'll talk more about programming later on. Top middle, a system for writing ethical decision trees. I was teaching my first year computing ethics module at the time, and this is the kind of thing that students might do there. Does a reasonable job. Top right, we look back at the business side of things. I got the system to pretend it was a customer service agent for an essay writing company, an area which has been a big passion of mine in my research. And it does a good job at pretending to be that. In other words, addressing any concerns a student might have or a customer might have about buying an essay, and also writing a continual promotional message every time it responds. And I'm sure you can imagine that real world companies are going to be using this type of technology because they want to sell. And we have to make sure students understand that they may not be talking to a human and how these attempts to market and sell to them can work. What else can you do? At the bottom left, you can actually generate PowerPoint presentations. Well, strictly speaking, you can't. You can only generate text using ChatGPT. But what you can do is you can generate a Python script, computer programming, which if you run that script, it produces the slides. So it's almost as good, provided you can run a bit of computer code, and the slides have got information on them. You can also produce a script to go with the slides if you want. You may see all kinds of fake videos on YouTube there, which essentially are automating this and adding a robotic voice or something to it as well. They may not be doing it the same way I did it because they may just write software to create 1,000 of these videos, but they can easily flood sites like YouTube. These slides are handwritten. And you can create websites. That final example, bottom middle there. This is just one page of a website I created about academic integrity. And it happens to have some case studies in, but essentially a website is text or it's HTML code, and you just open up in a web browser and it looks something like that. Now this has some case studies in, of course they're not real case studies because they've been generated by a machine. So it can do a lot of things, including some things you might not immediately think it could do. And I could give you many more examples about how to do these. So my first set of messages for you, watching this as an educator, is that there's a very good chance that a student can use ChatGPT to do your assignment and to pass. Particularly if it's a common assignment, if it's a lower level assignment, it'll be good enough. It might not be brilliant work, but it will pass. And not all student work is brilliant work. But what else can you do? Well, if you understand a bit about computer programming, or at least the logical processes behind the computer program, then you can produce good work. You can use a structure. And if you know how to code, you can do a lot more than that, like the examples I may have shown and I have shown in other presentations I've given in the past. But if you know how to use the computer as a starting point, ChatGPT, and then to edit the results, you can produce very good work. And that's the power of having a starting point and going away and improving it, the kind of thing we'd ask students to do if they were going to do a draft and get some feedback and improve upon it and continual incremental changes. But you can do a lot of this using ChatGPT itself. You can get it to refine individual sections of an assignment, or you can get it to do the whole thing for you, do a bit of human editing. So you've got the power to build upon what's been done before. If you know how to write, then think of the time saver there. So let's then think a bit about the kind of conversation that was happening in many universities around the world, and will continue to do so, which is, what skills do we want our graduates of 2023 and beyond to have? Well, one really important one is going to be just understanding artificial intelligence. There's a very good chance they'll be using this in the workplace, and they have to understand what it is capable of doing and what it's not capable of doing. That's a difficult thing because not every person who is going to teach them understands this themselves, because AI often looks something like a black box. What you do is you have a prompt, you send it through this black box, you don't know what's happening behind the scenes, it spits some output out for you. And really, we need to understand there's some maths going on behind there. It's a machine learning model. It's not particularly intelligent, as I said before. And as somebody asked me at the end of my first attempt at this talk, really we need a course for educators explaining all of this. I don't think it's around yet, but maybe somebody is working on this. But we definitely need this for students. Understand that the information may not be correct. It could be used as fake news. It could be used in many ways other than just an academic sense. It could be used to spread misinformation to large scale or conspiracy theories. We need students to be able to evaluate the quality of information, because ChatGPT could get things wrong. It can make up references. It can get maths wrong because it is not a maths model, it's a language model. It can write 2 + 2 = 5 because it knows that these symbols that look like numbers will go alongside symbols that look like maths operators, but it doesn't know how to do the sums. These things are getting better, so don't assume these are never right, but these things happen. They have to evaluate this information is correct and is what they want. Prompt engineering is a big skill. There are guides online about how to do this. There'll be jobs as prompt engineers. Putting the right instructions to a system will give you different output. There's a whole area about operating with academic integrity. That has to be instrumental in everything we do. Understanding the principal values of academic integrity, understanding why it's important, why you can't take a shortcut in assignment number 1 because you just won't be able to do assignment number 2 because that is built upon assignment number 1. So it's having that conversation with students as well. And our students, these AI-generated students, but many others, are going to be years ahead of many staff because they have grown up with this technology. They use AI all the time. They know that AI has been integrated into Snapchat, as it has recently. They see, as I've been told by senior people in Microsoft, they'll be available in Word soon, this text generation. It's not going to go away, so we can't ignore it. And these smart students will try and see if they can do their assignments. They might not intend to hand them in, but they will certainly give it a go because they want to see what will happen during that process. So we need to be prepared and understand that perhaps sometimes we really have to use the skills of our students as well, because they understand it better than us. I speak a lot about this area, and often I find it comes down to these ideas that there are different approaches we can take in our universities about how we think about the future of assessments, the future of education, and how artificial intelligence is involved. And all throughout these 4 options, ignore, ban, embrace, and educate. And I will tell you now, different universities have already made different decisions there. Some universities have announced that ChatGPT is banned. Some school districts in the US have announced this as well. But what is right? And it may be the correct answer is different universities. It may be a combination of these are required. But I want us to consider some of these, along with just a couple of pieces of evidence. This is an example from Reddit of a student talking about using ChatGPT and OpenAI and other similar systems to do homework for their peers. They'd worked out very quickly about the opportunities of this system, and they were making money from using it. Now, more students have cottoned on now, so I suspect this business model is not working as well as it did for them then, but students know about this. This is not secret. ChatGPT has been discussed in the media all the time. I've been asked about it a lot by the media. I've spoken about it a lot. Educators know about it. There are discussions everywhere, not just for the use of ChatGPT in education, but for its use in businesses, on online marketing, and other fields as well. So I really don't think we can ignore it because this is not a secret. So should we then try and ban it and detect it? There are lots of so-called AI detection systems out there. Like the text generation itself, they're black boxes where we upload some text and it says, is it written by AI? Now, this is just an example. Again, found this one on Reddit, but of the GPT-0 system. Now, this was released over the Christmas period. It was produced by a student, which is in many ways a good thing. We want students to be engaged in productive projects. And the student was smart. They got a huge amount of publicity for this because the media really wanted to jump upon a solution, but it doesn't actually work. You look at what it says it does, and the statistics about how successful it is don't actually say it detects AI all the time, and that's demonstrated here by this example where GPT-0 thinks the US Constitution is written by AI. Now, I don't think it was, unless there were time travelers who have used this type of technology there. But what I suspect GPT-0 is doing is it's picking up on certain properties of this text, which are similar to text it knows is already generated by AI. So it might be things like the type of words used. It might be things like the use of punctuation. It might be the sentence length. We don't know exactly what happens inside this black box, but this wasn't written by AI. And it's dangerous to rely on this technology in its current form. It's certainly very dangerous to accuse students of having breached academic integrity, of having cheated just based solely on this technology. So please, I strongly encourage you not to do this, to think of alternative approaches. So we can't ignore this, and I really don't think banning is the answer. Even if you try and ban it, people will access this technology in other ways. They will access it unintentionally because it is being built into so many products. So we have to educate. We have to help students understand what technology can and can't do for reasons I've already covered. But we also have to think perhaps about how we even go beyond that and really start to embrace this technology in our education, because it is there. And that's why I want to turn a bit of this talk on its head and to bring back this idea from the title, What's Possible? And I could list many ideas. People share them. This is being hotly discussed topic by educators more than any topic I remember in the past. So there are lots of great ideas out there. Some of them I like more than others. But what's possible? What we can do, we can generate images. This maze here, I generated using a system running with Stable Diffusion. This is just a screen grab. This is on my home system here. And in a few seconds, I can generate a maze with the prompt, a complicated hedge maze, funny line drawing. And I actually managed to generate this in one go. Sometimes it takes me a few goes. One go, I got a result I was very happy with for this talk. It may not be a perfect maze. We can't see all of it, but it certainly did the job of when I went to use a maze in a talk to show a bit of confusion or options or routes or pathways, those kind of indicators. But this interesting thing about this technology to me is I get lots of parameters, lots of options I can set. You can't quite see them all here, but I can determine, for instance, how creative this image was. And with words and text, you can't really have parameters in ChatGPT. You can write a prompt to tell something to be more creative or more humorous, whatever it might be, or more academic. But if you were to go into the underlying language model behind ChatGPT, GPT-3 or GPT 3.5, and access that in different ways, you do have access to some of these prompts. So one way of doing that is through the OpenAI playground, but there are others. And so you can do things with these with these parameters, like say you want more creative text, which means it's less likely to be factually accurate, or less creative text. You can say use more varied vocabulary or less varied vocabulary. And there are many other options you can set, and it just makes things perhaps less likely to be detected by AI because you have more control. Incidentally, GPT-4, which is meant to be a step change in the models, is expected to be released very soon as well. And that is going to be another step change in what we can do. And the AI detection models may not work very well. GPT-4 is meant to write much more like a human than even the current models do. So a lot of power again if you get inside these systems. Here's an example of a press release I created using ChatGPT for this very session. All I did to create this was I fed in the abstract, the original proposal for this presentation, and with details of the conference name and a few things to go with it, and asked, write a press release to promote my talk. And he did it. The only edit I made was to add the URL to the conference at the end of the press release. Now, this press release is completely fake, but the information is good because it's based on the information I supplied originally. It makes sense. There is a completely fake quote, 3 paragraphs from the end. I have never given that quote, but it looks quite realistic. It's the kind of thing I would say, I think. It makes sense to me. I'd be happy to use it without writing a new one. And it's not that dissimilar to the style of press release I've seen produced by universities to promote talks, or even at universities have written for me to promote some of my previous research. So a creative way of using this technology, perhaps a real world example in fields like marketing or PR that you could use, but also something that is just useful to people like me. If I'd wanted, I could have sent this press release to various sites that publish press releases or to pieces of the media to say this was coming up, you could cover my talk. It's not quite a cutting edge research talk where I necessarily invite the media, but hopefully I'm saying something useful. But think again about this technology at scale and what it can do. I've used this technology to do programming. This is something I worked on over the Christmas vacation period. Just a website to generate treasure hunt clues. And you can see some examples of that. I got it in a good state where I'm happy to use it, but I'm not going to unleash it on the world just yet because, like everything else, too many other things to do. But where I found this really useful is, yes, I am a programmer. I know I don't get time to do much programming from scratch. And what I'm not is particularly a JavaScript programmer, which is what this was written in. And I'm not particularly a front-end programmer. The HTML here, the web page itself is called the front end. There's also a back end, which is where all the programming is where all the processing is being done on the whole, and the two sides of a system communicate with one another. But even I'm not particularly used to them, because I know enough about programming, I can put in my request to ChatGPT about what I want, guide it through the process, and it will generate a lot of the code for me. I would say I can get ChatGPT to do about 80% of the work. It's not perfect because it can do things like, say you use libraries being a computing term for pre-existing code, libraries that don't exist. It can make mistakes. But being a programmer and understanding enough about how this works, I can help it to find its mistakes and to improve them, and where necessary, correct them myself. And so as a computer scientist, I look at this and think, well, our students will be using this technology when going to the workplace as professional programmers. Their employers are not going to make them write every line of code by scratch when they could be 3 times more efficient when they had a system like this. So we're going to have to teach students how to use this technology and how to understand what it can do. And even if we don't, students, at least the ones I teach, are smart enough to use it. But they still have to understand how to program, because if they don't have that foundational logical knowledge and they don't understand the basics of the code, they're never going to be able to find the problems and debug this. So it doesn't completely replace the programmer. So we have to be able to teach them how to program, have to be able to assess they have the foundational knowledge. Then we have to go to this further level where they're working with this technology for productivity. And so it's quite a step change in how certain aspects of computer science will be taught. Now, I can't talk about other disciplines, but I think a similar conversation needs to be had about what's going to be essential knowledge, what students need to do, and how do we address and update education as a result. I've also had students use this kind of technology. Here are some of my third-year students at Imperial College London in the Department of Computing working on their group projects. Two examples of things they did last term before ChatGPT was really released, but this was again using the underlying GPT-3 type technology or the underlying image models. So the example on the left, I showed you stable diffusion in the maze generation example a few slides ago. This group worked, instead of generating images, to generate videos, a video being essentially a series of images. And they did some really good work ahead of the crowd, because this video generation technology is becoming more widely available now because other people are working on this, but showing the power of these kinds of things. And then on the right, group of students who used GPT-3 to create choose your own adventure books, or to create the technology and a software system for generating those books. Now, you might remember, if you're of my age, these were quite popular maybe in the 1980s, where you would read a bit of a book and then at the end it would give you a choice, and then based on that choice you would go and read another page or another section of the book. And so it was a bit interactive. It was a form of game. Of course, we have computer games now which have interactivity in a different way there. But I thought it'd be fun to see if we could generate these books at scale and to make them interesting and engaging. And the group showed that, and they produced something which has a real business use. If you think that AI-generated books should be sold, which you may have a personal ethical opinion about, depending what field you're from. But they didn't go away and create the language model from scratch. They used GPT-3, but they created all the system around it. So they used this technology in a smart and ethical way, again, which I think people will do in the wider world. So think about what kind of projects your students could do using this technology rather than doing things from scratch, because the world is changing and we're working with this technology rather than against it. Let me throw out just a few more ideas as we come towards the end of this presentation about other things that that students may do, or that you may do as educators with your students to use ChatGPT. There are loads of examples, as I said, we could talk about here. One of which I think is you've got to get students using this technology, because they will come across it by chance if you don't, but to realize that the results and outputs might not be very good. So it's an evaluation type activity. Get the students to produce some work relevant to your field and to evaluate it. And they will see things like, we've got 50 students using this, they'll get 50 different answers, some better than others, depending on the quality of the prompts. Sometimes the information will be wrong. I wouldn't do this necessarily as an assessment, just in case ChatGPT is unavailable at any given time. And I wouldn't ever write something that depends entirely on ChatGPT, because other competitors are out there. Google's Bard is going to be released soon, I suspect. There's a Chinese competitor. There's other integrations, other ways students might access this. But get students using it and doing some evaluation. You might think about using this as well to improve your own workflow. So think about assessment design. Can you get ChatGPT to design your assignment, or can you at least get it to give you some ideas for the assignment design? One thing I think is quite handy is it can generate marking rubrics. They may not be perfect, but they're a starting point as well. And if you're thinking about the need to replace your assignment every semester, which is just a key concept really of academic integrity to me, that you don't reuse assignments and put temptation in the face of students to use answers from their friends in a previous semester, then ChatGPT can give you new ideas. And if you don't like the first idea, run it again or refine it. What else can you do? Well, something I've done quite regularly recently is I've taken the transcripts of my talks, particularly where they've been recorded, and I've run those transcripts through ChatGPT, or actually through the other systems I've developed, but it's doing the same thing, and asked ChatGPT to write a summary. And I often say write the summary in the form of bullet points, but this is, again, incredibly useful and powerful because ChatGPT does a pretty good job at picking up on what it thinks are the main points. And they might not be the same points you thought were the main points, which is quite interesting because sometimes we bring extra information into a lecture and it's not on the slides. And this is really added value you can give to students because, yes, they may have PowerPoint slides, but now they have a summary. They have it in a different format that they can use to help them revise or to prepare or to learn from. And I could do it with this very talk if I chose to do so, because I will have a transcript available because it is recorded, and see if what it comes up with as the main points that we should know about ChatGPT assessment, what's possible. I encourage you to see if ChatGPT can do your assignments. If it can, maybe you need to think about refining them. To me, think about assignments that are authentic. Think about assignments where students are actively involved. They could even be involved in helping to design the assignments. Think about assignments where you can see what the students are doing. You can engage with them along the way rather than leaving them entirely to their own devices. And you may think about some of the challenges with the ChatGPT at the moment, that it doesn't have access, for instance, to information beyond 2021. So if you ask a question beyond that point, it will not do a very good answer. It will make things up. Then maybe you bring something recent into the request. I have lots of colleagues in the Department of Computing who teach cutting-edge research they've been involved with. ChatGPT will not do a good job answering those because there's very little information available out there. And quite often as well, they tend to be quite mathematical for that. But there are certain tasks that can do better than others. And perhaps slightly controversially, to close this slide, you may think about using ChatGPT to generate feedback for students. You can get it to generate marks as well if you give it the right prompt, but the marks may be fairly random depending how good your prompt is, because they just say you want a number, it will give you a number, but it can give you feedback. There's an interesting study to be done, and I've not experimented with this very much yet, but is the ChatGPT feedback as good as human feedback? It could be more detailed, it could be more varied. Does it make sense? One thing I have seen it used for is to generate feedback for research papers. So if you're a reviewer, it can do that either to your own work or to replace you in the reviewing process. It can help write more measured responses if you're a bit prone to writing slightly emotional or frustrated responses, which I certainly can be about many things. It can write better emails sometimes than we may do. It can help with writing difficult emails, sometimes in some unpleasant situations as well. But let's go back to the feedback question there. My suggestion here would be perhaps consider using this to review drafts of student work or to show students how to do this and get some suggestions, but don't necessarily use it to review the final version and give feedback, because we're asking students to act with academic integrity and not misuse tools like ChatGPT. Then we have to lead with integrity as educators, and I think students still deserve real personalized feedback and to know that we have been interested enough to look at their work there. Maybe views will change on this, but for now, generating feedback can be useful. I've said don't go back to old ways of doing things unnecessarily, like this slightly jokey example here that computer systems can mimic handwriting. They've been able to do this for a long time. They've been able to mimic celebrity autographs for celebrities who don't want to sign their own autograph. And you can buy a font that looks like handwriting, but if we say to students, okay, you can't hand in typewritten work, you've got to write it out by hand, then some smart student will just come up with a system like the one on the screen, which will get a ChatGPT answer fed in to a mechanical device that moves a pen and mimics handwriting. That will certainly happen. I mean, even if it didn't, the student could just handwrite out this answer for themselves. So we're not really gaining anything, and handwriting is not really a skill that is used commonly now in the wider world in the way it was. People want things that are written, that are typed, or they're produced by computer. So my final recommendation, I have a few recommendations produced by ChatGPT still to come. My final recommendation is about proactivity. We do need to think about what we do now and in the future. This technology is still developing, so it will not stand still. I think this is a discussion we're going to be having for a few years to come, but it's about being proactive, not being reactive. Let's bring our policies up to date. They don't need to be entirely against this technology. They have to spell out to students what they can do. And what they can do may vary from assignment to assignment. It may become less rigid as they get to be more accomplished in their subject area. And it must prepare them for the future. It must prepare them for their life. It must prepare them to not be misled by AI. It must prepare them ethically. And it must prepare them for their jobs. And bringing in students like this AI generated picture here as part of the discussion, as part of our working groups, I think is incredibly important, because our students have to be our partners in this. And many of these discussions will happen at local universities because they're based on teaching and learning strategies. They may have to happen as well at a subject or a discipline level, because I can give good suggestions across many areas, particularly computer science, but I'm not an expert. Many creative fields will be thinking about using this technology in a different way, or they may be thinking about the threat, not the opportunities there. Can an artist, for instance, think about how to make their work more marketable using AI? Think about how to get better sales material from there. Think about how they work out which of their pieces have sold in the past, or what is more likely to be purchased. I'm just throwing those ideas out there because I'm not an artist. Will the market all be for AI-generated art? Well, I am an AI-generated artist if you believe that is a form of art, but really I'm a prompt engineer who can write prompts that generate graphics, a different skill. I asked, as you may expect, ChatGPT, what is possible? How can we use ChatGPT to improve assessment and education? By all means, ask it yourself. You'll get different responses because you get a different random number used as part of the process. And also the model is being adapted all the time. So it may give different answers today to yesterday. But here are 10 things ChatGPT said. Now, some of them are very sensible. I don't necessarily think they're all ones I would push, like homework help, just in case that becomes misused there. And but obviously things like number 6, improving accessibility, is always going to be a good thing, helping more students through education. Help students use this the right way, so they're using ChatGPT as an additional tool for learning rather than anything else, or misusing it there. ChatGPT number 10, look, I could talk about all of these, but ChatGPT suggests we use this for assessment. I talked about that already. I'm not sure that is completely appropriate. Bear in mind as well, ChatGPT, as I said earlier, this is just a language model. It generates words in a format where they look like sensible sentences and they make sense. But ChatGPT, really, what it comes down to, ChatGPT does not know about ChatGPT. ChatGPT did not exist at the time the data set for this was produced, so it can get things wrong. Sometimes it gets things very wrong. Ask it about ChatGPT and it can say things that it can't possibly do. So there are all these challenges to think about, but anything is possible, to quote Mary Poppins, if we let it be. So thank you for watching. I'm Thomas Lancaster. I'm sure I'll be talking about this area for a long time to come. By all means, follow me on social media. You're welcome to ask me questions. I run lots of workshops at different universities about this. I provide talks. So if this is a service I can provide for you, feel free to connect with me and There'll be lots of updates because I'm continuing to innovate and research this area. I wish I had time to try everything out with students, but that's why I strongly encourage you to share your experiments, your experiences as well with the sector, so we can build up a continued understanding of AI, how it's developed, academic integrity, and what's possible. Thank you.